The elected officials refuse to address the problem. The black elected officials refuse to address the problem. My own congressman refuses to address the problem. And I think the problem is black folks see all minorities as allies. And this is not the case. These people are not here for our common good. They're here for their own good. Where I don't have any ill will towards anybody, I also want to look out for my race. I'm a black American. I've never used a hyphen. But I will refuse to turn my back on my race and see what's going on in South Central to my people and let these people come in here and just take over. I'm not going to sit back and watch it. And I think it's a terrible thing, a horrendous thing for anybody to see this going on and say, well, he's a minority like me, so I won't speak up. I don't care where he comes from. The key to this whole thing is stop the denial, stop the alliances of, in other words, he's a minority like me, so I can't speak up against him. If this was white folks committing these lynchings to us in South Central, what's going on, there would be an outrage in this country. We have had fire bombs thrown through windows. We have had people's cars burned in the driveway because they happened to move into the wrong communities. We had a lady who moved to East LA, came to the state from the South, not knowing what East LA was. It was an all Hispanic community. She wasn't there one day. We had another man who was burned out of his house in Torrance last year. We had 5 murders in Hawaiian Gardens just because the people were black. This would not be tolerated if this was white on black crime. But the fact that these people come here, and it's the numbers, sir, it's the numbers. They come here in the numbers, they build up the Hispanic community, and they get this sense of power against us. And there are race riots in the schools every day in Los Angeles. It never makes the media. The black kids are being run out of the schools every day and told to go back to Africa. It never makes the media. We are having people who are being discriminated against on every avenue of society, economic, schools, even in our prisons now. They have drawn lines, and our prisoners in California are being beat and harassed and raped by Hispanic gang members who recently arrived here because of the numbers. My answer to you, sir, would be we don't need any new laws. Enforce the ones we got.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Jordan Report, and I am your host, Robert Jordan. Everyone, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Okay, guys, a lot of this is for the younger generation, the people who weren't around at this time or who were very young, because they missed the lessons of the past. That was the late, great Terry Anderson. Terry Anderson was the point man for mass migration when it comes to the black community and when it comes to Los Angeles. He was the last warner to tell them what was coming their way. They did not heed his warning, and black Los Angeles lost big. In fact, they lost everything. But anyway, we're going to go back so we can move on and give a warning to those, so we'll know what's coming next, people. Terry Anderson died in 2010, but he could see the shape of political change come and lamented how excessive immigration pushed black people physically out their neighborhood. It also lessened their self-determination in a Hispanicized environment. Plus, Terry never bought the Rainbow Coalition nonsense, that blacks and browns would unite against the hated whites. He believed Americans need to stand together against unfriendly demographic change. You see, Terry had a foresight. He saw all this coming. He knew this for what it was. I used to listen to his radio programs, and this was the only subject he ever talked about. He would tell us there's no more important subject than mass migration. And he was absolutely right. Today's African Americans make up 9% of the city's population. Again, that was 15 years ago. They're down to 6 now. Down from 17 in the 1980s. Blacks were up to 17% of Los Angeles population, according to census data. Migration from Mexico and Central America has boosted Latinos to almost half the city's population. It's over half now, from the 1980s. A similar shift has taken place in Compton, where 31% of the population is black, down from 73%, according to census. Though, despite those dwindling numbers, most of Compton's political leadership is still black. And that's because the people there couldn't vote. They were all illegals. Okay? So let me show you where all that has gotten the blacks in Los Angeles.
anger, outrage, and chaos at City Hall. The LA City Council in turmoil after racist remarks are made public.
Tonight, protesters are calling for the immediate resignation of former Council President Nury Martinez and 2 other members as the scandal intensifies. We have live team coverage on the political uproar and the growing fallout. We begin with Mary Beth McDade live at City Hall tonight. Mary Beth.
And Mike and Cher, things are pretty quiet out here tonight, but earlier today it was a whole different story when the cries for these 3 city council members to resign grew extremely loud, both out here in front of City Hall and inside the chamber. Outrage filled a packed LA City Council chamber. 2 of the 4 heard on the racist recording showed up for the city council meeting, Gil Cedillo and Kevin De Leon. The disgraced city councilmen finally left, basically forced out by the angry crowd. The crowd finally quieted when an emotional councilman, Mike Bonin, spoke.
I am reeling from the revelations of what these people said.
Councilwoman Nury Martinez can be heard criticizing Bonin's adopted black son, calling him a little monkey in Spanish.
And then there's this white guy with this little black kid who's misbehaved. The kid is bouncing off the effing walls on the floor, practically tipping it over. There's nothing you can do to control him.
These people stabbed us and shot us and cut the spirit of Los Angeles.
Then it was the public's turn to speak.
And I condemn her for her words because she has laid a nuclear bomb here that we will not allow to divide us.
The reason this is a hard meeting to conduct is because we heard an hour of some of the most hateful things the city has ever heard from 3-4 people in some of the most powerful positions in Los Angeles. People are hurting.
Acting City Council President Mitch O'Farrell agreed his colleagues must go.
The court of public opinion has rendered a verdict, and the verdict is they all must resign.
Meantime, outside City Hall, demonstrators showed unity and condemned the racist remarks while calling for the city council members to resign.
We cannot have representatives who are racist. Racists do not represent our communities, so we need immediate resignations.
Martinez didn't attend Tuesday's meeting, saying she's taking a leave of absence. She has stepped down as city council president, but hasn't given up her seat. Neither have De Leon or Cedillo. The only one to resign is the 4th person involved in the disturbing discussion, labor leader Ron Herrera.
They have never been representing our communities. That's why we feel that it's very strongly that we need to start voting around values and not around identity politics.
Again, people, this is lessons for the younger generations that's going to have to come up and deal with this stuff in the future. The blacks in Los Angeles were led into this trap by their own leaders, people like Maxine Waters, okay? And they were led to believe that they were in some sort of coalition with the Latino community. The Latinos never believed that. The Latinos always saw the black community as competitors. Still to this day, that's what they see. And so you're playing the game the wrong way. These are not fellow coalition members. These are people in a community that you have to protect your interests from. And since the blacks in Los Angeles didn't do that, they lost control of the city, as you can see. Now we're going to move on to Chicago.
New at 5, a startling allegation today made by Chris Kennedy, who's running for governor. He claims Mayor Rahm Emanuel is behind a plan to push African Americans out of the South Lakefront to enrich his wealthy friends in real estate. CBS 2 political reporter Derek Blakely brings us the story.
At a Westside News conference where he picked up support from prominent African Americans, Chris Kennedy spoke to a long-held belief by some in the black community.
Instead of using our resources to revitalize our city, we're cutting off resources to push people of color out of our city and perhaps out of the way of economic development.
Kennedy then alleged historic Bronzeville is in Mayor Emanuel's sights.
It will be a development play, but not for the residents who have lived there for years and years and who are being pushed out, but instead for a new wave of gentrification that defines a city which, as it gets smaller, is becoming whiter.
And Kennedy lampooned Emanuel's promises that crime and violence are down.
Not to the people in North Lawndale, he can't. Not to people in lots of neighborhoods in this city. where crime continues to increase, not decrease.
Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson fired right back. I'm not a politician, but I do take issue when the hard work our men and women are doing to beat back this violence is used to score political points.
What choice do people have but to move, to leave? And I think that's part of a strategic gentrification plan being implemented by the city of Chicago to push people of color out of the city.
A spokesman for the mayor flatly denies Kennedy's allegations, saying it's sad to see Chris Kennedy using cynical, politically motivated attacks about Chicago's communities for his own personal gain. They are a direct result, I should say they are a direct assault on one of this city's great strengths, our diversity. Also, Kennedy picked up endorsements today from Congress.
Clip of Senator Kennedy accusing Rahm Emanuel of basically ethnic cleansing. Ethnic cleansing is an international crime, people. You can actually take these people to international court for what is going on in Chicago. Now, the definition of ethnic cleansing is the systematic, forced removal of ethnic, racial, or religious group from a given area, with the intent of making the society ethnically homogeneous, along with the direct removal such as deportation or population transfer. That's what's happening in Chicago. It also includes indirect methods aimed at forced migration by coercing the victim group to flee and preventing its return, such as murder, rape, and property destruction. Both the definition and charge of ethnic cleansing is often disputed, with some researchers, including others, excluding coercive assimilation or mass killings as a means of depopulating an area of a particular group. Again, people, you have to look at that. And a lot of the stuff also crosses over into genocide. When you read the 5 acts that are needed to commit genocide, to be defined as genocide, it says in 1948, the United Nations Genocide Convention defined genocide as any of the 5 acts committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. These 5 acts were killing members of the group, causing them serious bodily harm or mental harm, imposing living conditions intended to destroy the group, preventing births, or forcibly transferring children out of that group. Victims are targeted because of their real or perceived membership of a group, not randomly. So a lot of the stuff crosses over into each other, people. But if I were you in Chicago, I would be looking at international law.
Chicago's leading voices support Rahm Emanuel for mayor. The Defender backs Rahm, praising the largest job gains of any major city. The Tribune says because of Mayor Emanuel, students spend more hours in the classroom and have full-day kindergarten. The Sun-Times called Rahm bold and courageous. And President Obama says Emanuel is the mayor we need.
He's making sure every Chicagoan in every neighborhood gets the fair shot at success that they deserve.
Rahm Emanuel for mayor.
All right, everybody, I'm trying to connect the dots. We were talking about genocide, ethnic cleansing, cultural cleansing, mass migration, coercive migration. See, all this goes back to the person that Senator Kennedy was talking about, which is Rahm Emanuel. How many of you knew Rahm Emanuel's father was a terrorist? He was an Israeli terrorist. So there's a direct connection between terror and what is happening in Chicago. Now let me describe to you what Rahm Emanuel's father was. British MI6 files contain information on the elder Emanuel's participation in terrorist activities of Irgun, a Jewish terrorist organization that targeted British forces, UN officials, and Palestinian Arabs in lead up to Israeli independence of 1948. Emanuel's father, Benjamin, was part of an Israeli assassin team that murdered Sweden's Count Bernadotte in 1948. Bernadotte was the UN envoy in Palestine who sought to find a solution to the UN partition plan that gave Palestinian land to Jews from beyond the Pale. Benjamin Emanuel, a Jew from Russia, whose real name is Ezekiel Auerbach, was arrested by British police for terrorist activities in the months prior to Israeli independence. Many of the British police killed by Emanuel and his Irgun colleagues between 1947 and 48 had been transferred to Palestine upon Indian and Pakistani independence in 1947. Irgun saw the increase of British police from the Indian subcontinent as a major threat. You see, there's a direct connection, people, between ethnic cleansing, genocide, and what's going on in Chicago.
There are places where being who you are is a punishable offense. There are places where you might be sentenced to death because you chose to live. These places have many names, but the ones who flee have one: refugee. And it is in the name of the refugee that Hayes has dedicated itself for the last 130 years. Created in the name of the Jewish people, for the Jews who fled Tsarist Russia and Soviet Russia, the Jews who fled the death camps of Europe, the Jews exiled from places as varied as Algeria and Cuba and Iran. 4.5 million rescued and resettled so far. When they said, "Give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free," we were the ones at the docks helping them breathe free. And we are still at the docks, and the deserts, and the cities and camps and lands where people no longer have a home in their homeland. Only now it's a farmer from Darfur, a shop owner from Syria, a family from Ukraine, a child from Colombia, a Christian from Iran, a gay man from Uganda. The 60 million souls who still wander the earth in search of sanctuary. Why? Maybe it's because being Jewish means you don't have to be reminded never to forget. Maybe it's because we are called in our most sacred texts to love the stranger. Or maybe it's because as long as there are still places it is a crime to be who you are, there is still a mandate for us to be who we are. Highest for the refugee.
All right, people. Most people in the black community do not associate Jews with mass migration or illegal aliens or anything like that because they simply don't know a lot about Jews. And they don't know the business of Jews. But the business of Jews is refugees, is mass migration. You're not facing Latino economic power or political power. You're facing Jewish economic power and political power because it is only they that can accomplish something like this. Okay, this is government level money. This is billions of dollars. The organization that you need to do this, you have to be operating on a government level. And that's who's helping them accomplish this because they control the government. And so it's important to understand that you're not fighting Latinos. You're fighting very, very powerful Jews.
Now, to align yourself with somebody who's obviously a one-term mayor, if he even makes it that far, you better be worrying about your job. You better be worrying about your longevity. Because we're going to vote and we're going to get you out because you ain't doing right by us. That's what time it is.
Chicagoans furious and sounding off on Mayor Johnson's plan to tack on another $70 million to migrant funding. Frustration building to the point that some voters are now working to get him out of office, as you heard that constituent there saying. Garrett Tenney live in Chicago with the story. Hi, Garrett.
Yeah, Dana, good morning to you. This migrant issue has become an Achilles heel for Mayor Brandon Johnson, so much so that there are now multiple efforts underway to vote out Democrats and the mayor. We saw that yesterday at the city council meeting where several groups of black voters showed up wearing red shirts with the words "No More Blue," "Go Red," and "Turn Chicago Red." Many of these folks are lifelong Democrats who are now actively working to shake up deep blue Chicago, specifically because of how the mayor and the governor have handled the migrant crisis, doling out more than $1 billion so far for that. And here they are warning the mayor and city council about transferring another $70 million from the city's rainy day fund to take care of the migrants.
We need that money in my neighborhood. We need that on my block. So I'm asking y'all to use our tax money for our people. We need it. You vote for the money for these immigrants today, and we're coming for them seats. You can believe that.
The police are fighting with them in the shelters that you guys are funding. You guys think it's a great idea, but yet your police officers are getting attacked. Your public's getting attacked.
Currently, state law does not allow voters to recall Chicago's mayor, but after seeing how Mayor Johnson's first year has gone with the migrants and crime, a new group wants to change that by getting a referendum on the ballot this November that would pave the way to voting Johnson out.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap this up with the words of the late, great Terry Anderson, right where we started, okay? Because he was the most honest about this. He was the one out front. He told us all this stuff first. He saw the danger in this. But here he's going to describe how the black community got sucked into all this, and who we listened to, and why we should never listen to these people again.
I have a theory, okay? And I believe it's correct. And I've done a lot of study on this. I've been to Washington, D.C., talked to all of them. It started out as get whitey, okay? Started out as get whitey. We're going to bring in these other, here's this word again, it keeps popping up. We're going to bring in this other group of minorities who are going to dilute whitey's power, okay? They're going to dilute whitey's power. And then as the group started coming in, it became a tide that couldn't be reversed. So then it became, well, let's be nice to them and maybe they'll vote for us. Well, they did in some cases until they got one of their own to run for office. When I say one of their own, I'm not knocking all Hispanic Americans because I love Hispanic Americans. I'm saying that a lot of Hispanic Americans are race-based, just as Maxine Waters and Diane Watson and Jackson Lee and the rest are race-based. They believe in black only. Well, these Hispanic leaders believe in the same thing, and they side with illegal aliens. Our problem being black, we don't have any illegal aliens to side with that's going to give us power. But the Hispanics do. And then it became with the Black Caucus, well, wow, look what's happening. But if we speak up now, we'll sound like the white Republicans, so we better not. So it went from get whitey to maybe they'll vote for us to, wow, the water's boiling.